Welcome to the Rice County Historical Society. My name is Sue Garwood and I'm the director here. Many of you may have gone to the Mill City Museum in downtown Minneapolis, and it's a fabulous museum. But when you're there, if you've listened to their story about the great Minnesota-Minneapolis milling history begins in 1880. In fact, there is a part of Minnesota's milling history that happened 25 years earlier than that, and that's Rice County's milling history. In earliest Minnesota history, we were the center of that milling industry. And with us today is Jeff Jarvis. Jeff is a Rice County milling historian, and we're fortunate to have him with us today to talk about some of that history. Welcome, Jeff.
Welcome. Good morning.
May I ask you, how did you get involved or interested in Rice County history, milling history?
Sure. First of all, I'd like to say that with all the inventions that were made here and technology advances in the milling industry in those first 25 years before 1880 up in Minneapolis, there was so much that was done here, and this whole region became so famous for all these advances in technology that Rice County Historical Society could have a building just on Rice County milling. Don't you agree?
I agree completely.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I got into this book. I realized that in the process of doing my research for writing this book that there was so much material that wasn't ever covered before. There's bits and pieces of milling history in the different towns, but there's not one collection point for all the stories of the people that worked in the mills. The advances in technology, like I talked about before, and just the historic nostalgia that hasn't really been collected before. I got my start in 1996 in this whole industry, and that was through the Rice County Historical Society Morristown chapter. I helped them with a fundraiser and with a watercolor painting of the Morristown Mill, early days scene. And but anyway, that kind of piqued my interest in the mill, and there was a lot of support that I was given as a volunteer working in the Morristown Mill, and I just felt like this is where I belonged. And so it was the water, the timber, and the technology advancement. And I want to mention too, this land was perfect for growing the spring wheat that helped make the mills thrive so well and made a lot of people a lot of money.
May I ask, I've heard that at one point in time there were as many as 17 mills between, is that Morristown and Northfield, or Faribault and Northfield, or?
I believe that number of 17 was between the southern end of Faribault,
okay,
including the west side mill, King Mill,
okay,
all the way to Northfield,
okay,
on the backwaters there.
Now, there were obviously mills then between Faribault and Morristown as well. At what point in time, do you have any number about how many mills there were in Rice County, in all of Rice County, operating at once?
Probably over 30.
Were they all flour and grist mill, or did that include some sawmills too? And
sawmills. Also included in my book are the mills that were operated by steam.
Oh, okay.
It's become apparent to me that all the mills, the early mills, weren't just operated by water power with water wheels.
Oh.
That there was also a lot of turbines run by steam. And so what they'd have to do is that they would order these huge boilers about the size of a wagon, and they'd have to cut a path through the woods from Hastings here to bring these huge boilers in by ox cart.
Sure.
Sometimes 12 oxen.
Well, railroad didn't come to Rice County until 1865, and milling was here 10 years earlier, so absolutely they were being pulled by ox cart.
That's correct.
Yeah. So you started, well, Morristown's very lucky to have your help there, and we're lucky that you're able to, as an artist, picture those mills as they would have been, because many of them are in ruins, are they not?
Right, right.
So
We have Archibald Mill ruins.
mhm.
That's a site of national history. That's a nationally recognized site.
Hmm.
And we have the Oxford Mill,
Where is that?
just east of, or just west of Cannon Falls, about 3 miles.
Oh, okay.
Beautiful little mill site. But other than that, there's some foundations left, like the 14th Street Mill in Faribault here,
Mhm.
which is pretty famous. That's where the earliest milling took place.
What is there any one mill? I'm sure probably Morristown's mill is near and dearest to your heart. Is there, in your research, has that continued to be your keenest mill,
Well,
or is there others that have been also really interesting?
Well, there's all of them are very interesting, and they all have their own story, the people's story that worked there. My favorite are the mills that have the most information available, like
Sure.
the King Mill, the Woolen Mill, the Morristown Mill. Those are my big three, and this Oxford Mill that I talked about before. It's nestled in a little valley on the Little Cannon River, just west of Cannon Falls, and it has all 4 walls made of limestone, going up 4 stories.
Mm.
The framework is intact, and it's just a lovely area, and it just stokes my imagination to dream what these farmers must have experienced when they brought their wagon loads of grain.
Sure. So, are there any stories of those 4 mills that are really interesting that you would mind sharing? One or two of
Oh,
them here?
sure. One of the best stories is in my book. I have mill town stories of all the towns on all the rivers, and I recognized that I had nothing for Warsaw, no information, and I was kind of lamenting that, and I was kind of wondering what I was going to do. And lo and behold, there was a story written in the Daily News about Clinton Weber. It said that he was a Warsaw native, and he's 104, and he lives here. So I thought, well, that's a guy that I'll be interviewing for my book, one among many. Well, I'm a procrastinator too, and I didn't get around to it right away. But we had a program downtown, and it got filled up, and there was only 1 seat left for me. So I went in there, and everyone has name tags on, and I look at this little old man next to me. You're Clinton Weber. So we got talking, and the first thing he said was, I was an accountant at the Faribault Woolen Mills. And it was my first job out of high school in 1923.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, what made the story more fascinating was part of my research took me down to Mankato's History Library, and they have a lot of artifacts there from the Woolen Mills. And all these accountant ledgers were there.
Oh, sure.
So I looked at them. And it wasn't until I met Clinton did I realize that he had penned all those entries into those ledgers I was looking at.
They're not just buildings, they're places where people are connected.
Absolutely, sure. And of course then I had to ask Clinton Weber if he wanted to go down to Mankato with me and look at his old accountant books.
Neat.
And he didn't share my zeal. He says, no, I don't really care to go. He has more important things to do. But that was probably my most interesting story.
And you have interviews in a sense.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
In fact, it's one of the things that you and Dr. Anderson have done is you've done some oral history interviews, and you have graciously donated copies of those to the museum. So that's great that history is continuing to live here at the museum. Any other stories that?
Well, one of the interesting facets of this book are the interviews, and from those interviews, the anecdotes, the stories are just hilarious. For instance, there's a fellow that lives just 3 blocks from the Woolen Mills. For 37 years, he trudged 3 blocks to work, 3 blocks home for lunch, back and forth, twice. Over 37 years, he walked 10,000 miles to the mill.
Wow. We are sitting in front of the flour mill display here in the Harvest and Heritage Hall. Is there anything in here that you want to, now gold, I'm seeing gold mine and King's Gold flour and so on. That's all from the King Flour Mill, is that correct?
That's correct. Most of your artifacts on the wall here are from the H.H. King Flour Mill, but also too the predecessor to the King Mill was the Sheffield King Mill, where Sheffield had taken on a partner named H.H. King, and before these items were printed with Sheffield King, it was just Sheffield that owned it. And some historians know that when Sheffield was in town, he owned the Walcott Mills and the King Mill.
Oh, wow. So a milling dynasty of sorts.
Pretty much, yeah, right. And I cover all that in the book, but we have some gears and wheels here that no doubt were used with belting off the turbine from the water power used in the mill. And there's all kinds of neat information available, and I'd encourage you to come down and look at this display. There's some really neat artifacts. Right? One interesting item that I did bring today is this brass template or brass stencil that was donated for my program tomorrow night by Donnie Jasinski. This is a template that was used to paint the oak barrels for the flour. And,
oh, neat.
Being that it's flexible, it could be flexed right around the oak barrels like that, and then they could just dab the paint in through the holes cut in the brass.
And it says gold mine, is that right?
Yeah, gold mine flour was their claim to fame back then.
I can see an apron up there that says gold mine flour and
You
so
bet.
on. Yep, absolutely. I just want to say on behalf of the Rice County Historical Society and everyone who's interested in Rice County history that we want to thank you for your efforts. You know, history does not happen and then everyone remembers. It happens with the efforts and is remembered with the efforts of individuals like yourself who have an interest and take the time to gather that history. And I certainly appreciate it, and I know that many in Rice County appreciate it. So
Great.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Thanks for being here.
And one other thing,
Yeah.
the book will be published and ready for book signings next spring.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah.
And hopefully
Yeah.
we'll be able to have some here at the
bet.
Historical Society.
bet.
That'll be great. I know
Sure.
there are many who are very anxiously waiting for that, so that's really great.
Super.
We encourage everyone to come to the Rice County Historical Society and take a look at the King Mill Flour exhibit as well as other exhibits here at the museum. We're located on the Rice County Fairgrounds across from the Faribault Woolen Mill. We encourage everyone to come here during the Rice County Fair. It's Rice County Free Fair, and we're open Tuesday through Sunday, extended hours. All of the buildings will be open. We're located at 1814 Northwest 2nd Avenue, normally open Monday through Friday from 9 to 4. Other times are available by appointment, and we encourage you to give us a call at 332-2121 to make any appointments or make arrangements to come at another time. Rice County Historical Society, preserving the past for future generations.